What the heck is going on with Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams? We're going to break it down for you today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, happy Monday. Happy NFL Combine. Not kickoff day, I guess, technically. Workouts don't start till Thursday. Coach interviews. Your coach is the only one talking today. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
I didn't know he was the only one. I know it's at 4 o'clock. So
yeah, the only one.
Yeah, kind of messed up my day.
Like 29 general managers talking. Jerry Jones isn't, Chris Greer isn't, and I'll be honest, I don't know who the third that is.
Probably Les Snead, right? Because they don't go.
They don't really go. I think that's
right.
So what a segue!
Unbelievable, right?
Les has his hands full right now, as is figuring out this quarterback saga with Matthew Stafford, and that's what we're going to get into here today on the show.
Kyle, I need to address something.
Yeah.
When I was doing my open of what's better than this guys being dudes,
you got really aggressive with it.
I did. And I feel like I need to explain. There are times where if I don't push it hard, I can't turn over the next word. So the best thing I can do is I got to get it out there so I can transition, like get enough air out of my lungs to get into the next word of the sentence there. So if it ever feels really aggressive, just know I feel like I have to do it to be able to get the words out.
It's like an old moped engine, right? You got to rev it so hard or else you're going to flood it. And then
I don't know a lot about mopeds.
Or lawnmower, whatever else.
Oh,
the old school
throttles
gas.
and all that.
Yeah, you got to throttle it a certain amount or else you're going to flood it. You're going to stall the engine.
Yeah,
I hate to stall out. So
thank you. That you brought it home. You went to a moped, man. And then I wasn't able to apply that to other small engine machines. But anyways, the Rams, Matthew Stafford, they've given Matthew Stafford's agent permission to speak to other teams about his market value, right? So that came out kind of like over the weekend. There's been some things, right? Really, when you go back to even last year, Sean McVay is on the doorstep of his opening press conference for training camp last year, and it gets pushed back 3 hours, right? Because they're trying to get this Matthew Stafford deal figured out, and they wind up renegotiating that contract, and it's like optically a 4-year deal, but it's really just a 1-year deal. They front-loaded all the guaranteed money last year, and then there's $4 million guaranteed this year. There's none in 2026, and as Matthew Stafford just turned 37 a few weeks ago, here we are, right, with the situation that he's able to talk to other teams about his market value, which is not necessarily to pursue a trade, but maybe to help everyone get on the same page with what's a fair market contract for Matthew Stafford, but also a Rams team here that, Kyle, I think this is a Super Bowl contending team with Matthew Stafford next year. And that's not the same if it's a different quarterback. So a lot to peel back today.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different layers here. I think one of the first ones being, if I had to guess, I would be willing to bet that there's no trade here. And this is the equivalence of a transition tag type situation or a franchise tag or a exclusive tag type situation where you have the opportunity to let the league dictate the market value of the player. And then once you determine what that is, you say, okay, now if a team comes over the top and says, Matt, we pay you $61.5 million this year, just like you did in 2022 with the Rams, I think that might change some things, because I think that probably changes Matthew Stafford's appetite to stay in LA if that's not within their budget by a substantial margin, right? I think that's where things get really dicey. If some team that's really desperate says, we got a bunch of cash, we're not afraid to give you a 3-year, $160 million contract extension with 110 of it fully guaranteed, right? Like if you get that kind of offer, I think that's where this could go haywire. But I think the Rams are not wanting to bid against themselves. I think it's smart to allow a 37-year-old quarterback and an opportunity where if you do move on, whether you have proof of concept with Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell, whether you get into a draft player that you like, whether there's somebody internally that you would want to make a short-term transition with and load up on draft capital for 2026. Like there's a lot of different ways that it can go in Spiderweb. But I think you have to get that major backbreaking offer first. And I'd be surprised if he got a valuation elsewhere across the league that would make this hard to find an amicable middle ground between the Rams and Stafford.
Matthew Stafford is a dude, right? I think he's an unbelievable quarterback. And yes, he's 30. This is his age 37 season. He just turned 37. You don't think he can top the APY of Dak Prescott of $60 million? Or even if it came in at 23% of the cap, that's going to be more. That's where I get hung up on this. Like, I don't know if the Rams are willing to meet it there. And
I don't think they would, and I don't think they should, because you'd rather be a year too early than a year too late at a dead end position than a 40-year-old quarterback.
Well, is there a world where you just make it work for this year? Because I think this Rams team is obviously they have a very competitive game against Philly in Philadelphia in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Had reasonable chances to win that football game. Like, I would want to see what my team looks like next year with Matthew Stafford, where they don't have that many challenging things to figure out. Like the Cooper Kupp deal, Rob Havenstein, Tyler Higbee, and you got a bunch of good young players. Like, you have a good opportunity to like add and build and like gear up. It's the NFC. Like, why can't they be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl next year with Matthew Stafford? So, like, I understand a long-term commitment, because for as true as it is that he's only missed one game the last 2 years due to injuries, like, there's something all the time. Cracked ribs, the back, the shoulder. Like, he's a dude that has a absolutely dynamic arm talent, right? You wonder about, all right, when does everything start to go a little bit? Like, obviously doesn't quite run to the degree that he did earlier in his career. Like, I get some of the decline questions, but for an organization that has perfectly captured lightning in a bottle with a competitive window to go gear up and do the thing that they did a couple years ago and win the Super Bowl, man, it doesn't feel like they're far off from doing that again.
So let's look at my next talking point pertains to the Rams and their situation.
Okay. All right,
if you want to go to break.
Let's get there. Let's go to break and talk about the Rams and their situation. We'll get the paths forward, all kinds of stuff here. Be sure to stick with us. FanDuel, folks, when the NBA season, when the action kicks off, you got to head on over to FanDuel. It's the best place to place your bets on the NBA. I love it. Whether you're chasing down some player props, you got some over-unders that you like on some scoring, or maybe there's a late game rally that you want to check into. It never really feels like you miss your opportunity watching these NBA games. And whether it's a live bet or you could make a same game parlay, you could do something ahead of the game. Like, the NBA is what is in right now, and FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game more exciting. And like, it's one of those deals where you also get paid instantly when you win. So check it out right now. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so you asked a question. How hard should it be for the Rams to figure out the middle ground here? Have you looked at their cash schedule for this year? Not their cap situation, their cash schedule.
I haven't.
All right. So I have. The Rams, as things are currently scheduled, have about $171 million in cash spending commitments for 2025. Out of that 171, Joe, how many players do you think are making $8 million or more in cash this year?
Not many. I bet you it's not many.
Maybe
five.
Five? Okay. Well, you're one off. It's 6. Matthew Stafford, scheduled for $27 million in cash this year. Cooper Kupp at 20. Kevin Dotson at 16.5. Rob Havenstein at 11.5. Jonah Jackson at 9. And Darius Williams, the corner, at 8. That's it. Now you have an additional 1, 2, 3 players making between 8 and 5. And so that's your middle class tier of the team. This is what happens when you hit on a bunch of draft picks that are on rookie contracts and you hit on a bunch of undrafted free agents who are really good at developing talent internally when you get guys in that are skill-specific guys and you can hit it out of the park. Though that middle class is Colby Parkinson at 7 3/4, Tyler Higbee at 7.5, and Kyron Williams at 5.265.
And that's the proven performance escalator for Kyron, right?
That's it, right? Yeah. You've exhausted anything above what should be considered a substantial amount of cash or even a middle tier amount of cash. They're going to move on from Cooper Kupp. They've made it established. Mm-hmm. You could take the $20 million you're going to pay Cooper Kupp, and you could just give the whole thing right to Matthew Stafford. Right. And now you're 47.5. And now you have an equal amount of very small middle class on your current roster that has a lot of talent. And then you can get into Darius Williams at $8 million as a 32-year-old player. Do you want to stay that course? Tyler Higbee, of course, had the injury the year prior, and Colby Parkinson. Are you paying 2 tight ends that combined $15 million plus? Do you want to do that? You could probably make some other pivots and then add to this team, and you're going to be in a really healthy position from a cash versus cap spend perspective, even if you get aggressive in free agency. And you can almost double Matthew Stafford's cash that's scheduled to him. So for me, again, that's kind of where it gets to, unless teams are coming in at $60 million. And I know you kind of speculated on whether or not you thought that would be possible. And maybe we can get into some teams that could be in a position to offer that or would be in a position to offer that. I think this is a very no-brainer, especially considering the Kupp's your number 2 player and he's coming off the books.
Right. And I don't think the rest of their expiring contracts are super concerning. Like Alaric Jackson, I'd be willing to let him walk, especially with the rest of what you have on the offensive line. Bobby Brown at defensive tackle, I think, is a sneaky one to bring back because I think he's their best run stuffer on the interior.
I hope he hits the market selfishly.
Yeah,
non-Rams.
I think everybody's kind of feeling that way. He's everyone's favorite young nose. He is a good player. Yeah, 4th-round pick that they had out of Texas A&M. Akala Witherspoon, who winds up being an answer for them at corner, but I don't think he's going to be expensive. Michael Hoyt, who's like a rotational piece of the front. DeMarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell, those aren't expensive players. Christian Roseboom, there's not a whole lot here that I think is concerning in terms of expiring contracts that makes it prohibitive to taking care of Stafford in the way that you need to.
Yeah.
So you seem to feel pretty confident that they're going to figure this out and Stafford's going to be a Ram. I might have a little bit more. Open mind feels like the wrong way to phrase it, but I think I'm more open to the idea that Stafford is not back with the Rams.
I guess can I clarify where I'm at?
Of course. Yeah, you should.
I am purely skeptical that 37-year-old Matthew Stafford is going to have the kind of market that makes it impossible for the Rams to find the middle ground.
Right. So you think for the contract
market value.
Okay. Yeah. You think that they can find the contract. So here's my concern. When I look at the Rams, I do think that they look at themselves as more of a young contender. And they're going to get rid of Cooper Kupp. They've made that clear. Stafford's, or at least talking about it. Maybe Rob Havenstein, no guaranteed money in his contract this year. He's entering his 10th season. Tyler Higbee, another player that they could transition from. This feels like a team that is simultaneously a young contender, but even in some ways is a transitional team. And I wonder how much Sean McVay and his past transitioning from quarterbacks increases his appetite to do it right now. Because going back to Washington, right, everything falls apart with RG3 and the injury. Kirk Cousins, right, arguably got better there. Maybe we don't know what prime RG3 would have been healthy. We don't know what that looks like, but they came out of that okay. Jared Goff with the Rams. Transition away. Matthew Stafford, you win the Super Bowl. That went well. And now you're here with Matthew Stafford and potentially looking at another transitional opportunity amongst a roster that's very, very young. Are we sure? Are we sure that they don't feel like they want to get a quarterback that maybe isn't as expensive as this roster gets more expensive and they want to balance things out? Like, am I crazy for thinking that some of this history doesn't suggest that it's possible?
So here's the thing that great run organizations do.
And we've complimented the Rams.
I think they're the best program building franchise in the league right now.
Yes.
Because you just outlined young contender simultaneously team in transition has been in transition for the last 2 years, and they've competed through that window, right?
Yes.
Great run organizations are highly opportunistic when upgrade opportunities happen at the quarterback position. Think about the Chiefs with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. Think about the Eagles with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Think about the
Rams with Goff to Stafford. Come on, right?
Rams from Goff to Stafford, right? So if you feel like there is an upgrade, I don't think you're going to find a better quarterback for your 2025 roster than Matthew Stafford. But the longevity element, especially paired with if you bring Sam Darnold hypothetically back to LA and he signs the cap equivalent of the Baker Mayfield extension in Tampa that was 3 for $100, right? It's a cheap quarterback contract.
Yeah.
If you can get a multi-year window and you're talking about paying Darnold 2/3 of what Stafford might cost, hypothetically, and you're getting a player that's entering into the physical prime of his career after he's matured between the years as a quarterback, which takes time at the NFL level. Is that a better option than Matthew Stafford and maintaining the window? Maybe some of that depends on what you can get for Matthew Stafford once the conversation transitions in from what is his market to what is the trade market and value, because that's a completely separate conversation that none of this gets into, that all of the aggregations accounts over the weekend kind of glossed over that fine point detail that we're strictly talking like compensation value with Stafford and teams. We're not talking Rams talking trade value with teams for Stafford.
Here's the thing about Stafford, and Sean McVay even vocalized this multiple times throughout the offseason. He said that one of his deepest appreciations for Matthew Stafford is that in those playoff games, when they had to have it, like, he had his team in position to win. Like, you don't look at any failures of the Rams in their postseason runs over the last couple of years and really put much of that on Stafford. He comes through. I think what's challenging about invoking the other possible names, Sam Darnold, right? Not a guy that you're ever going to associate as like clutch dude, going to bring it in those big moments. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo is another name that, you know, in reading Jordan Rodriguez's work with the Athletic and all of this Stafford stuff, you know, she makes it pretty clear that McVay likes Jimmy G and you know, really appreciates his work at all these things about him. Like, could he be a bridge quarterback? And Jimmy G doesn't. He's not that guy either. That's what's challenging for me. Is like, you got that guy. And if you believe so much in your operation and your scheme and your system that like you're going to be able to get the most out of any quarterback, okay, that's cool, but that's also, there's a level of ignorance or arrogance there that I'm just not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a characteristic of McVay to an extent, and what we've seen with other people's on the Shanahan like disciple list.
Right, that whole, the roots of that whole coaching branch is the confidence that they will call the right plays at the right times. And then if they're executed, and that's what you've seen why Shanahan has so much success. And Shanahan's probably the one that's been the most dependent on that. I think you could argue it was McVay when Jared was there. And then when Matt comes in and the dynamics of the quarterback coach relationship and the execution on the field changes, then it feels like it has shifted away from that. Could you very easily see them going back that way? Yeah, I think so. But
and look, Shanahan's done it with he's been a quarterback with Super Bowl, 2 different quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. So is McVay. Like, that's not normal stuff, right? Like,
right.
So I just feel like they probably internally do believe that, well, are we really going to do it's 37-year-old quarterback with these injury stuff? Are we really going to figure this out? Or am I that dude as a coach? Yeah, let's go. Let's bring in friggin' Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones or Jimmy G or pair that with a Jackson Dart. We're going to be fine. We got a young, talented roster. I'm the best coach in the world. I just kind of feel that a little bit, man. And I think they're crazy for it because I think again, my perspective, and I'll admit, I haven't had a great read on the Rams the last 2 years. I underestimated them in a big way. But I think Matthew Stafford's been a big reason why I've been wrong about the Rams in preseason. Mm-hmm. That's a different conversation for me if it's not Stafford. Well, all right. We got more to get to, including, where could Stafford go, replacements, all that stuff on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us.
I'm glad you got the memo about all black today. I think this is like the 4th straight show where we have not coordinated and worn the same color.
When we both had maroon on, I knew something was up.
Was that Friday, right?
Sometime last week. I'm like, we're really maroon.
Yeah. Neither one of us really wears maroon.
Right. I have one maroon piece of
I have one maroon piece of clothing as well.
Put it on at the same time. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Great. Well, paths forward for both Stafford and the Rams. Which do the thing do you want to do first here? I think that's the most appropriate way to do this.
Let's deal with the Rams.
Okay.
And then let's talk about where Stafford could play elsewhere.
So you want to know what other quarterback selections they could make.
Yeah.
You want to know what name I am shocked has not come up through 22 and a half minutes of this program?
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. What do you think?
He's on the list. I have Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, and then Jimmy G / Jackson Dart.
I think Rodgers is your have your cake and eat it too scenario, where if you win, sign Rodgers for presumably cheaper than Stafford because his stock is further down. Say what you will about Aaron and playing in Green Bay with LaFleur and how that felt like it got old for Aaron towards the end. That was the best stretch of play we'd seen, was a coach that pushed back with his scheme a little bit on Aaron.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Now I think you'll probably have to cross-reference Aaron likes everything static and getting up to the line of scrimmage and doing diagnosis versus, and the Rams haven't been as extreme as some of the other branches in like San Francisco and Miami are much more motion dependent. So I think that you could probably find some middle ground there, but that is a dynamic of that relationship that I think would be a challenge to kind of grasp at first. But you could probably pay Rodgers close to what Stafford's making now. So if you get up to the line of scrimmage, air quotes, and you survey the quarterback landscape, and it's like, well, Darnold's gonna price himself out of where we want to go, or we want to really get a quarterback.
He's also Sam Darnold.
He's also Sam Darnold, right? Like, there's questions. The last 2 weeks of the season happened, right? Or hey, we really like this 26 quarterback class. Maybe we want to load up on draft capital and make sure we're loaded to be locked and loaded to go get a guy next year in that class. And we still want to be able to compete this year. And the transition player that we think might be able to do it for us is Aaron Rodgers. I think that's probably my most attractive option that they have.
Especially if they're going to live in a year-to-year world with Matthew Stafford, right?
Right.
So there's the net of, okay, just sign Aaron Rodgers. You'll get something for Matthew Stafford. And if you're going to go year to year, all right, this is going to be a much more attractive path to do it. Although I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as good as a quarterback as Matthew Stafford. I do have concerns about that. But like, I think I've said this before, but I think Aaron Rodgers with his next team is not the same as him with the Jets, where it was, okay, come save us, right? Whatever you want. Here it is. We'll do anything. No, that's not it anymore. Like, that didn't work. Go play your part. And I think this is a great spot for him to go play his part. And plus back to LA and all California, all that stuff,
I was just getting ready to say, where'd Aaron play college?
Yeah, Cal.
Oh, right. He played in Cal.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Go back.
Yeah.
To where it all began, right? What was forget what company used that as a tagline. Might have been from a movie or something, like back to where it all began. But like for Aaron Rodgers, you could do that. Make a lot of sense.
Dude, I'm not even a Rams fan though, but I find myself just like disappointed in any other path that's not Matthew Stafford as a quarterback.
Open your mind.
I can't.
I
think so highly of the team. It's not we're transitioning Alaric Jackson to somebody else at left tackle. Talking about a dude at quarterback that's won a Super Bowl for your team, throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp and Ben Skoranek.
I get
Cam Akers is your running back.
I get it. But would you rather be a year too early or a year too late?
I want to go win the Super Bowl this year. That's what I want to go do if I'm the Rams.
But if you're the Rams, what happens if Stafford wants multiple years of guarantees and the wheels fall off the bus this year? Like what makes the Rams situation so interesting, and you alluded to it earlier in the show, they really have this pristine opportunity right now with all the players on rookie contracts, not a lot of expiring contracts. Their cash flow is particularly low right now. They have potential to cut even more fat from the roster with moving on from Cooper Kupp and potentially Rob Havenstein and potentially Tyler Higbee. Like, if you get this decision right, you could be an absolute monster.
You can.
But if you get it wrong, what's the opportunity cost there? And how hard do you have to climb back out of it on the other side of whatever if you make the wrong decision? So they internally know whether it's right to hold on or not hold on.
Right. Well, and yeah, it obviously comes down to what's the commitment to Stafford? Like, what's the resolution? What's the commitment?
And I think the easiest thing to do is take if you move on from Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp, take all of the cash they are scheduled to get, and you can offer it to Matthew Stafford. And now he's very highly competitive in the quarterback contract, and do it for a year. And you could do the same song and dance again next year.
So for the same concerns that you outlined about, hey, if they do stick with Stafford and there's a commitment, okay, what if they're not early, et cetera? That's the same question that any team that would want to bring in Matthew Stafford would need to ask themselves. Yep. And I think the suitors are the suitors. What, the Giants, the Steelers, Raiders, and Titans? Is there another team to invoke? The reason that you're going to gravitate to the Giants is because that's a make or break situation, right? Like that's and I think ownership should know that, and they would need to feel a level of comfort. And obviously I don't think Matthew Stafford's going for the number 3 pick or anything like that, but
is there that kind of pressure on Pittsburgh? Fan base got real loud. And I know fan bases don't run organizations. I get that. But that fan base got real loud. They are pissed.
Would you rather just sign Aaron Rodgers, or would you trade for Matthew Stafford though?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think there's more fine print that comes with Aaron. If I would trust any coach in the league to handle whatever those issues are, it would probably be Mike Tomlin. But I don't know. I mean, what happens if Stafford decides to play for 4 years and play to the age that Aaron Rodgers is? Like, that there's a not negligible age gap there that could give you multiple years of what you have not had since not even late stage Ben, like before late stage Ben, like middle tier career Ben Roethlisberger, because late stage Ben was not a good quarterback.
I think Stafford's going to want to play for a while. Like, and I know that could be a great mindset, but ultimately comes down to like, does the body fall in line with that? I understand that. But I do have this impression from everything I've read about Matthew Stafford that like he wants to play. So that's what makes it hard. Like, could it be 4 more years? Yeah. Could this be it? Sure. And that's what makes this a hard conversation.
Is there any chance if you're Pittsburgh, like what's the trade package? because that's the other part of it too. Is like you mentioned the Giants and the number 3 overall pick. That's not happening. Giants have 34.
Yeah, I think 34.
Is
right?
Their next pick? Yes.
Isn't this similar to the Aaron Rodgers trade? However many years ago, it's got to be similar, right?
Well, that's a good baseline. But like, what happens if you're Pittsburgh? Do you send 21 and get a 3 back and just be done?
What's interesting is Les Snead is on record of saying that picking in the 20s is purgatory.
Also, he might not like that pick.
Well,
but
you might not.
But you could take that pick and trade back out and get a future one, which then you can load up for the 26 class.
Right. So I think it's 21 for Stafford and 90 or something like that. Right.
Yeah. Like, would you rather do that, or would you rather take 34 and a conditional 3 in 26 if you were the Rams?
I think I'd want to do. I'd want 21 is what I'd want.
Yeah.
I
think
21.
so too.
Yeah.
So a bunch of different layers, obviously, to this conversation, and this saga is gonna play itself out this week. Deadline spur action, and this week is everybody's in the same place. There's a lot of conversations that are going to be happening. We're getting close to the deadline of the start of the league calendar year, so I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of news and updates and insider reports all throughout the week. We'll have you covered here on the show. We hope you enjoyed this kind of deep dive into the Matthew Stafford saga and where it's currently at. Tomorrow on the show, yours truly put out a top 125 big board for the 2025 NFL draft for the start of NFL Combine Week. We're going to get into that and look at some storylines across positional distribution and some players that I've watched in the last couple of weeks that I have just fallen absolutely head over heels for that are day 2 prospects and things of that nature. So we hope to see you then. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. It's going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. We're out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.